Oh God, this is awkward. Okay, so in this episode we're gonna talk about sexism and
Yeah.
misogyny in Vietnam because it's the culture that we know the best, and we have a lot of tea to spill, and
Yeah.
I know
We
we
have
already did like one episode on sexism in Vietnam, but we just feel like there's not enough place to
right.
let our our frustration, and
Mm-hmm.
so a second one about
Yes.
the same subject.
Yeah. It's never enough.
Anyway,
It's
it's never
never kind
enough.
of enough because we grow up in this culture all our lives, and just imagine like 20 years of being kind of treated badly just because you're a woman. That's just it's not nice. So here's another episode, and we
Just a
want to start.
little disclaimer. We want to
Yeah.
start with always a disclaimer that
Mhm.
okay, first of all, it's raining right now, so if you're hearing something strange on my end, it's the rain.
Mhm.
So and second of all, we this is not supposed to be exhaustive. So try to take what you can get, and
Right.
we really welcome criticism and comments as always. Let us know what you think about
Right.
this episode by commenting um, on whatever platform you're listening this on. And yeah,
DMing.
oh yeah, that's you better just DM us on Insta. So at just dot another dot rant or our personal accounts, which we would leave the links down below.
Right.
Okay, that's enough for disclaimer.
Yeah. Oh,
So
also one more
let me gonna.
disclaimer. One more disclaimer.
Okay.
We're not making this episode to shit on men because I am sure there are decent men out there, and I'm sure there are great men out there. Just we're not shitting on men. We're just shitting on sexist sexism. You know,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
just putting it out there. Don't be mad.
And with all of that acknowledged and taken into consideration, I think
Hmm.
we can all start the
Right.
episode.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a long introduction.
Okay. So first thing first. Very it's kind of negative, but I think like growing up, we do have a lot of we do experience a lot of like not necessarily discrimination, but like mistreated. We are mistreated a lot, and also there are just ridiculous expectations on a woman or like just a girl. So,
Hmm.
what are those expectations?
There are like so many boxes that you have to check, but the biggest are, well, I narrowed down into three boxes. So first of all, you have to have a husband.
Mhm.
Like a woman cannot, be successful or happy without a man.
Mhm.
Just put it out there. It's very sexist. And then, and then it's not just to just have a husband. You also have to have a child, and this child is also has to be a boy,
Right.
right? And then you also, as a woman in Vietnamese culture, you are expected to sacrifice for your family and for your husband, for your kids, and so many things you have to sacrifice for. That
Mhm.
is ridiculous.
Mhm.
And we're gonna talk about um, those three things
Yeah.
one by one.
Mainly.
So first of all, the husband, the husband's thing. I
Right.
think is so. This is not uncommon in Vietnamese culture. Like when a young woman hits 20, or even not, like even before that,
Yeah.
like their parents would kind of pressure them into finding boyfriends or a husband. And this is not just for Vietnamese culture. I'm sure is the same shit for other cultures as well.
Right.
But we know the Vietnamese culture the best, so we're just gonna talk about um, Vietnamese culture.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like you have some experience, some really bad experience with this.
Oh my God. Yeah, because my mom is totally a family person. Like she really sacrificed a lot for the family, and unfortunately, she thinks that is her duty as well, which yeah, makes me kind of sad. But I think growing up, my dad not so much, but my mom, in these recent years, like when I just turned 20 or 19, we start talking about like whether I'm gonna have a boyfriend anytime soon, and like when I talk, when I told my mom that if I don't get to meet the person that I truly love, I might as well just not get married and just live like my happy single life. And she was like, "What? No, you cannot just be single all your life. Just think about it when you get older, you don't have children, nobody's gonna take care of you. Do you see the lady, our neighbor who doesn't have a husband and just look how she's living right now? She's sick, nobody's take care of her, she's miserable." And I'm like, oh my God, this is this is just I'm just wrong. And like how how is it just makes sense that I would be miserable without a man in my life. Like, and like, how is it justified to be a person just like looking into somebody else's life and saying that she is not having a good life or she's not satisfied with her life because she doesn't have a husband or children to take care of
Hmm.
her? And like, also the thought of marrying so that you would have somebody with you when you get old and sick is just like, what's the point? I'm not living to fulfill somebody else's um life just to
Hmm.
have um children at the end of my life take care of me and send me to nursing homes. Like that's it's just that.
So
And
what we see from your experience is that first of all, the way that unmarried women are seen in Vietnam, they
hmm
are seen as that old lady across the street who's
right.
miserable or
hmm
something like that.
Yeah.
And it's so disrespectful and
Right.
sexist. And no, it's just rude to say
Right.
that this person or that person's life is shit
Right.
just because they don't have this or that. Like, how did you even know? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, it
Yeah.
makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
And also I feel like a very common mentality among Vietnamese people, especially older people,
hmm
is that they kind of have to force younger people to, complete their picture, basically. So if they imagine like the picture of you growing up being side by side with a man and then have lots of children
hmm
and you don't fulfill that image, and then like
hmm
they would say that you are like being so disrespectful, or not that, but you know what I'm
Like you're
saying.
not paying off their money that they invested in you and raised you
What?
up and all that shit.
Wow.
So
And every
yeah.
time that, so basically there's a very narrow definition of what a woman should be,
hmm
and they're just trying to force all women into that.
Right.
And it's ridiculous for me to witness that, because this is not just, you know, any rural areas. This
hmm
is the kind of ideas and mentality is also very prevalent among educated parents and
hmm
people are from like middle class or even like the upper class.
hmm
And it's shocking to me like how just how widespread this is, because you think this is 2020,
Right.
so these kind of sexist ideas would not like exist in my family, right? Because
Yeah.
my family, like my parents are educated, and educated is 2020, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna deal with that, right? So, but in
Yeah.
fact now it's the complete opposite,
Right.
and also that's having a husband is not enough for them. You also have to have a child, and this child has to be a boy, which is
Yeah.
like sexism at its peak.
Right. It's terrible. My family doesn't have a son, and it has definitely affected our family as a whole. Because like, people keep telling my dad to marry another woman to get so that he could give birth to a
Ew,
boy, and I'm like, what the fuck is that?
that's terrible.
Yeah, that was like, so granted, that was like 15 years ago or something like that. So I hope they're not saying it now, but it is still terrible. Like, how can you say that to somebody? Like, it's an acceptable thing just to like abandon your daughters and your wives and just get another woman just for having a son. Like, how significant is that son? Like, what the fuck is that? Just no.
Just
Also,
what's the point in that?
yeah,
I just don't see it. I don't see the point. Like, give
right,
me the point.
yeah,
Present me the point. I don't see it.
yeah. It's like, why is the son more valuable than a girl, like, and than a daughter? What's the point here? What are you trying to say? Not nothing. There's no value in that, and it just shows how sexist and terrible it is. Like, just the culture and how it is accepted, actually, how it is accepted among people to like shame somebody, a woman, for not giving birth to a son, like to a boy. Like, it baffles me. It baffles me.
Like,
Crazy.
a man in our culture who doesn't have children and doesn't have a wife would
Hmm.
not face this much prejudices.
Right.
But like a woman, like, oh, now she's the old lady across the street whose life is just miserable because she doesn't have a kid, she doesn't have a husband, and da 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 da.
Right.
It just it makes no sense, and
Hmm.
people are not trying to question themselves on that,
Hmm.
and keep perpetuating
Hmm.
these sexist notions and
Right.
kind of pass them down to the younger generation, which I refuse. Um, and
Yeah.
also, a woman in our culture kind of has to sacrifice for her family,
Right.
and not just her career, is
Hmm.
her passion, is her hobbies, is her friends, is her pastimes,
Right.
is everything for family, especially for husband, and
Hmm.
then for um the whole family in general.
Right. Now, I do appreciate that, like, let's say, like, of course, a mom, a wife loves her family. Like, that is totally, like, appreciated and should be celebrated at all costs. But I'm saying the notion of having this standard that women have to sacrifice, or like willing to give up on her own satisfaction to fulfill the family that she has, is toxic. Because this actually happens to my mom. So she is a pharmacist, and uh, before she had my second sister, she was like already making good money and stuff like that. But she could advance her career more and more. But she stopped there and she remained like the regional manager. So she could have gone to like national and stuff like that, but she didn't because she said that she had to take care of the family, and my dad already come home late and make the money. So if she's also making the money as well, then um no one's gonna take care of the family. And of course my dad is not gonna sacrifice his career for the family. So the one who has to stop there and not advancing their career, it has to be my mom. So she's just stopped there, and eventually she quit the job at the company and go back and help my dad with his business. So that's just kind of sad.
So I feel like these three boxes, if a woman doesn't check any of these, just doesn't check like even just one of these, they will immediately get shamed and
Right.
rejected. Like, so just like, for example, like if a woman has a husband, like of course we're talking about the in the context of Vietnamese culture. So if a Vietnamese woman has a husband and she also sacrifices for her family, but she doesn't have a child, she would be shamed and rejected because she couldn't bring the family a boy or something like that. And then this would create conflicts between her and her husband. And of course, I know there are like feminist men out there, but I don't see any.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't personally know any like feminist, like any male feminist in my family, with my circle. So that would inevitably lead to conflict between her and her husband, and potentially, potentially get them, divorced or something like that. And then she would lose her family, and then she would not have anything to sacrifice for. She would lose everything. So as long as you don't fulfill one of these boxes, your life will be shit.
Right. It will be
according to this, this system or whatever, and you will become like that woman across the street who doesn't have a husband or a child or something like that, and people just throw shit in your face. No, not in your face, but like, more like
and also
behind your back.
Yeah, and also like when a woman is successful in her career and like advancing it to their fullest potential, but she doesn't have a boyfriend or a husband, people would find ways to downgrade her and say like, oh, she makes a lot of money, but what's the point because she doesn't have a husband and she's gonna be alone all her life, and like who's gonna take care of her? It's like it's not enough for a woman.
It's never enough for these people.
Successful.
Because if anything, that's just out of their picture and doesn't in what they imagine a woman should be, then they will freak out, and it was like, this is not a woman anymore. She is something probably dangerous. Be sure to protect your child from her, something like that.
Right.
And it's so funny because we've seen a lot of women in my life who doesn't fit these boxes, and almost all of them, if not all of them, are in some way, in one way or another, rejected by their own society.
That's true.
So, for example, the lady across your house, something, she obviously doesn't check a lot of boxes.
Right.
And now she's like this, this person that whenever like your daughter doesn't listen to you, that you would like name her and like try to like if you and say things like, if you don't do what I say, you will end up like that person, this person, and that's so toxic.
Right. It's
Like
just wrong on
our
so many levels.
entire culture is telling women that their lives are not worth it if they do not have a man,
Right. It's like
and that's so
you would
toxic.
be
And like,
incomplete without a man in your life.
so
And
like what? Like if you don't have a man, you're incomplete.
right. It's like what the fuck? And like the I don't think now we're not men, so I don't know, but like I don't think men are pressured to get married as much as women do. And like there's not
Right.
this
Like they
notion
certainly
that
do. They
yeah,
certainly do, but not as
not as much.
brutally.
Like like people just say that men can marry late in like their mid 30s, that's fine. But if a woman and she's like late 20s and 30 and early 30 and she's not married yet, that is like a red flag. It's like what are you doing with your life? You're too
Hmm.
old. As you get older, it would be hard to get pregnant and like deliver a baby. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why are you doing
Basically,
crazy
according
about
to this,
that?
so basically, according to this culture that we grew up in,
Hmm.
the whole point of being a woman is to get a man and
Yeah,
to give birth to a son. That's
right.
basically it.
So the whole point is reproduction.
Mhm. Oh wow, this is called reproductive oppression or something, and
Yeah,
it's so prevalent in Vietnam.
it's also like I don't think the notion of a man is incomplete without a woman in his life is very relevant in our culture. Like
Hmm.
I think people would be like, oh, he will be fine without a woman in his life. He can fuck around. He doesn't need to have like a wife. He's fine. His career is like great. It's flourishing. But if a woman just like fucking around and like not have a man, that people would like, oh, she's a slut. She's just, you know, like say terrible thing about her. And I don't know why is it so hard for people to see women like just as a person and she is capable of doing whatever she wants. Oh God, this is depressing.
So you know what? We're gonna talk about why the reason why it's so ingrained in our culture. So first of all, I think it's already ingrained in our culture
Hmm.
because um we Vietnamese pre-colonial was not super progressive and nice to women. So we have that kind of legacy
Hmm.
to work with. But something also really bothered me is that whenever we try to talk about this, people just would like shut us down because you're ruining the atmosphere, you're ruining the good vibe, something like that. And it's very important in Vietnamese culture to be, as a young person, to be
Hmm.
obedient and to always listen to what the elderly say.
Right.
And if you talk back at them, especially in your family, it was be seen as disrespectful. And most of the time, whenever this conversation spark in our among our friends, I feel
Hmm.
like people are not super enthusiastic about it. They will be like, "Oh God, this nurse again."
Right. And it's like always about like if we talk about it, it would ruin the mood. So please don't talk about it. We have to maintain a good mood. Just shut
like,
up.
okay, it's true. It's true that sometimes being overwhelmed with activism and problems of the world will be, that will ruin the mood. And but there are things that you need to just call out.
Right.
Like, for example, like, if someone says something very racist on Twitter, on Facebook, and if you care about a person, and if that person like means something in your life, then I feel like you should have a conversation with them, or at least try and let them know where your stance is. And the thing is that whenever we do that, it never ended beautifully. It always ended like just ugly.
Yeah.
Ugly.
Right. And we ended up getting hurt
Mm-hmm.
because they would turn, this is, well, not, I don't know, this is like personal experience, but like they would turn back to us and hurt us instead of like educating themselves. It's like, it came to a point that they get so defensive that they're not just like defending themselves anymore. They would personally attack the person that's trying to educate them, and like it's just ugly. It's terrible. Why do people just have to be assholes? Question of the day.
And I feel like I don't want to blame everything on education, but I feel like our, or at least my education in Vietnam hasn't been that feminist.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't feel like feminism is a thing that we talk about in school, like at all, or not even just like mentions. Like I don't feel like I don't even think like I've ever heard a teacher talk to us about feminism or things like that, or even just mentioning it. Like never happened. Or even in university, I don't think it never happened. But university, there's a reason for it because it's a university. We talk about what's important and relevant to the classes, the courses that we're taking. So
yeah, the major.
right. So that's okay. There might be a reason for it because okay, if you're like chemistry major and you're attending a chemistry course, for example, it's not very likely that your teacher would stand up and talk about feminism. Like it's just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
But
like as like general education, the 12 years, there are many opportunities for like the message to be spread, but it's
right.
I think like I think the people who designed the system actually kind of get the idea of feminism and sexism wrong. Like they do they do think that it's, I don't know, maybe they think it's significant to also celebrate Vietnamese women, but whenever that happens, like what we learn at school is like whenever a woman is celebrated, she is doing something that is supposed to be like a man's job, like a man's duty. So, or she is celebrated because she is supporting
The
her
revolution.
husband. Yeah. Or something like that. Like it's always like she is supporting somebody else or representing something that she is not supposed to do, and like that's
I
not.
don't know. I feel like a woman only gets mentioned in our textbook either because she a communist
Right. Yeah.
or or like she is a very old poet from like a very long time ago, things like that. And like I'm sure like those are like I'm sure okay, for example like Hong like definitely someone we should celebrate.
Right.
But I don't feel like all of this mentioning of women's powerful role in our revolution or war, something like that, is very relevant to what we're dealing with right now in our society.
Right.
Like with and we don't talk necessarily about feminism. I don't think we talk about feminism. Even when we talk about, all these sexist thing that, the women in the past had to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not technically about feminism. It's also it's most about it's mostly it's mostly about trying to get the tears out of the eyes of students, and it's not about what the student can do to improve women's place
Yeah.
in society right now. It's not about feminism. It's really not about women. Like basically,
Yeah.
I feel like our
Right.
education has not placed um, enough emphasis on feminism,
Mm-hmm.
which is I don't blame them because well I should do.
Well,
I
because
I,
the
I
system
do
is
I
built by
do
men.
right I do understand like okay these textbooks are like super old and people don't want to try to change it because I don't know they
Yeah.
just don't want to change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but why should we just confirm
Right.
conform into this ridiculous curriculum when we can talk about real stuff and
Mm-hmm.
there's so much room for it. I
Right.
remember like in high school like there are times we don't do anything in class. So there are so many opportunities where we can talk about feminism and we can educate our children better,
Mm-hmm.
but we just completely miss them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a shame because I feel like teachers can do so much more, but they are so pressured by the curriculum, by teaching the useful stuff for the exam or something like that, that they have to completely put aside whatever they hold at heart. I
Right.
feel like,
Yeah. I mean, like, also, a lot of the time when we want to speak up and call out somebody for their behavior, we are being disrespectful. Like, that's what they view us. So, obedience equals respect. So, if you're not being obedient, then you're not respecting the culture, you're not respect the person of the culture. And, like, mm, that inhibits a lot of important uh conversations that that could lead to much progress.
right. And the ridiculous thing is that, we spend at least 12 years to turn our children into obedient sheep.
Right.
And then and then we turn around and ask them to be creative, to be innovative, to be brave, to be progressive and stuff. Like, you're like asking the impossible. This is not, this does not make sense. And I don't know, I feel like we can do something to change that.
Mm.
But even when like I tell people that I know that okay, this is sexist, or you cannot say this or something like that, they would get so defensive, and they
Mm.
would not be willing to change like at all. And or even if they like are willing to listen, they just like kind of like at best what they would come up with is, "Wow, I learned a lot today," or something like that, and would not really
I don't know
do
if it
anything.
stays in their mind, but like
Like,
I guess like it's doing something, because it's hard to say. We don't see it happen right away, but I guess let's see in a few years. I hope
I don't
like
know.
the people
I
around us.
okay. We have this story.
Mm-hmm.
So we told okay. So one of our friends
Mm-hmm.
loved talking about looting during Black Lives Matter protests,
Oh God.
and I think we explained to her like 3 times why she shouldn't say that, and I don't see any change or progress here.
Right.
So that's the frustration that I have for a lot of people, is that they are not willing to put out the effort and the work and the time and just the amount of care, to change anything
Right.
and just keep on perpetuating racism and sexism. We're talking about sexism, so there's that.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to talk to people nowadays because, like, how do you talk to them without making them feel bad about themselves? Like,
Right.
I have to care about my feeling, and I also have to care about their feeling, and I also have to care about what to tell them. That's a lot. Like,
Right.
activism is not easy nowadays.
Yeah. Also, like the first thing first, I think a lot of people fail to acknowledge that they do still have these prejudices and biases in them, whether it's sexism, whether it's racism, whether it like any like kind of like
Ism.
yeah ism thing, transphobia, homophobia, like all of that. Like they don't acknowledge it. They just like, oh, I'm not that. I am anything but that. Anything that is terrible. I feel like they know what it is. They know what feminism is. They know what sexism is, but they don't understand it. That's why they fail to acknowledge that they still have these prejudices and biases. And like
Right.
because they fail to acknowledge it, they cannot change anything. They cannot change the behavior. They cannot um, do anything to make society better. And in fact, they are contributing to make this underlying biases and prejudices even more relevant in society, and that what makes sexism thrive. And but because they don't acknowledge it, they don't feel responsible for monitoring and evaluating their behavior. It's like
Well, here's the thing. If I acknowledge that or accept that, this is a problem, that I
right,
should care about this, then, there will be responsibilities. There will be
right,
responsibility that I have to do something about it.
yeah,
And God, I don't want to do anything. So you know
right,
what?
right,
I'm just gonna pretend I didn't hear anything.
right.
It doesn't happen. I don't know her. So that is what. So that
I think,
is
like
what.
at one point we both were like that. I think when we were much younger.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Oh, definitely.
yeah. So I
The
hope that people would like there would be a point in their life they would realize that they need to change and acknowledge their wrongdoing.
right.
Yeah.
And I feel like this defense mechanism is everywhere. It's so common. It's everywhere. Like people just trying, you know,
Right.
I don't have anything to do with sexism. I don't need to learn about it. Things
Right.
like that. Like
Right.
everyone should learn about sexism. Like okay, if you have access to education, then
Right.
okay, then I feel like you should learn about sexism.
Right. And I hate to say it, but it's like it's a social responsibility to, just to educate yourself and not stand in place of oppression because it is terrible. It's a terrible thing, and failing to acknowledge its relevancy in our society, it's just like doing sexism a favor, and like
Mm-hmm.
because people don't want to feel responsible. People don't want to feel responsible for anything. It's just like the system and sexism, they are just together oppressing women of our society. And it's like it's the same thing with like no snowflake ever feel responsible in an avalanche. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like
Wow,
I really like that. Shout out
is
to
that a quote or something?
Voltaire.
Oh
Voltaire,
wow.
yeah, I really like that. Um,
So
anyways,
and I think this kind of explains why it's so hard to talk to people about this or why people are so defensive about this.
hmm
Because when you're telling them that these things exist,
hmm
you're basically telling them to take responsibilities for this, take
right,
some certain kind of responsibilities for this.
hmm
And you know, the easiest way for them to feel like, oh, I'm not a bad person
Right.
is just to ignore it or just to attack, to lash out at us and say things like, you're overreacting, you're too sensitive, or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
instead of listening and learn and try to change something.
Right.
Is obviously easier to,
Right.
you know, refuse any kind of responsibility,
Right. Because I mean,
because
like
it's
the
always
last,
easier when you're
yeah,
not at fault. It's always easier than when other people are responsible for this, not me. It's not me. I'm not sexist. I'm just
right,
this or that or
yeah.
thing like that.
I mean, the last thing people want on their list, their to-do list, is like another responsibility. Like, oh my God, now do I have to be responsible for the women as well? They will be like, no, I am already not like hurting them or like abusing them or doing anything like that is apparent sexist. So
Yeah,
I
and
am
they
a good
think like that's
person.
enough.
Yeah, that's enough. I'm doing more than enough. Like I don't have to care about this. I have too many things on my list. Goodbye.
And
Shut the
people
door and
always like
that's it.
that. Like, oh my God, women are asking so much of
Oh, yeah.
us. They should be
Right.
content with their situation right now.
Mhm.
Well, the reason why we're asking for so many things is that we don't have anything
Right.
in the first place, and we try to break that imbalance
Right.
and try to bring everything to equality.
Mhm. And like
Hmm.
you can be content with what you have and be progressive at the same time because
Right.
if we just keep comparing to someone who have it worse than us and be content by that, then there's no room for improvement. We would not be progressive and like we would just be at this one place. Time will pass through us and nothing would change. And like, what's the point of not evolving? This planet is like falling apart, like this with this fucking pandemic and like climate thing and all the social injustice. And you're saying that we should be content with what we have? What the fuck? No, we don't. We could be happy with what we have right now, but we can still always do better. That's why we're talking about this. That's why we're frustrated that you're not listening.
And I feel like that argument by itself is so rude and insensitive
Mm-hmm.
because, like, well, the reason why people are not content is because their situation is shit.
Right.
And instead of helping them, you're saying, well, then help me, or then just have a shit life or something like that. It's just not really helpful, and it's really rude because that's literally the reason why we're asking for more. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, progress is never easy. Progress is never comfortable. I know it's a very comfortable thought to have. Um, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a good person. I don't have anything to do with this. That
Right.
is a very comforting thought to have.
Right.
And I'm sorry that we cannot really, in this world, we cannot
Yeah.
really have that thought all the time because there's always something that we can do and should do. And doesn't mean that you can never be content with what you're having.
Mm-hmm.
You can be content with what you're having and in fighting for progress.
Right.
And you just don't see it apparently. I don't feel like people don't see it. It's just people don't even try to see it. People just like, oh, I don't want more responsibility. I
Right.
just want to stay in my comfort zone and with my very comforting thought that I'm a good person, that I don't need to do this, I don't need to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is harming society, and like we're. I think also people do have the thought that it is beyond their control. Like sexism, feminism, racism, like all these issues are beyond the control. They cannot do anything to actually make an impact. That's why they're not doing anything. Because like what's the point if they don't see change? And I think it's if they're focusing on that, then they we cannot better ourselves. Like this society would just crumble apart because if nobody is doing anything, then like what where are we going from here? Like everything you do collectively affect each other. It's intertwined. It's affecting each other, and you as a person always have an impact on society and the planet, and like you are significant and what you do is significant. So please don't be an asshole and just try to better yourself. So yeah.
Okay, so we have talked a little bit um about the problems
Mm-hmm.
and the situation that we are in.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back to sexism because I wanted to end this on a good note. I'm not saying like sexism is a good thing, but I want to see like hope in our generation
Oh
because I
yeah.
think there's some hope in our generation.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sexism is slowly but surely
Mm-hmm.
decreasing among young people.
Right.
Well, I'm actually not sure because I'm not really interacting with humans anymore. Um,
Right. I mean,
so what about you?
celebrating
Like,
that is COVID-19, so thank God you're not spreading the virus.
yeah, so I'm doing my part.
Yeah.
Okay, so but I'm very happy to find out that there are like a lot of pages on Facebook and Insta accounts that promote progressive ideas and
Mm-hmm.
especially feminism. I
Mm-hmm.
think that is something we should celebrate definitely,
I
but
think
what
we should
they are
leave
not
the links
super.
to the
Oh,
pages
definitely, I'm
down
gonna
below.
leave the links down below.
Yeah.
And but I feel like they are not like super mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
So these kind of ideas are
Right.
not like touching or reaching a lot of people. And I
Yeah.
feel like that is such a shame because you just look at Vietnamese media, like the videos that get the most views are like Ayla Eyes or like stupid shows that reinforces that reinforce you know sexist
Mm-hmm.
and homophobic biases,
Mm-hmm.
which is alarming.
Yeah.
But I just really hope that feminist content or progressive activism, progressive content
Mm-hmm.
will slowly and surely get to mainstream culture soon. But I'm not sure about that because I'm not super in touch with Vietnamese culture, um, like online culture.
I
Um,
guess like hope is like somebody is doing something, so eventually it will reach
right,
other people, whether it's on a large scale or a small scale. It's still an impact,
right.
and like I appreciate that.
But it's still very hard because we can do as many things as individuals, but if the bigger institutions, for example, the education system, if
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't change, if the education system doesn't change,
Right.
a lot of young people would not know about feminism in school and would not study it and would not learn about it, which is such a shame because school is supposed to be where you learn about this, right?
Right. No, but it like we said, like the individual, we are doing our part, and hopefully it will reach the institution. And I don't know. I don't know what would be the most effective way to, of activism in Vietnam that that would eventually reach the higher power and like making big impact change. But if we're just doing our part, I guess
Right.
that is like more than nothing, just
Mhm.
so much more than being on the other side.
Right. Just start small, I think, is a really good tip. Just start
Mhm.
small,
Mhm.
call people out, just
Right.
call people out for saying like sexist stuff. Like
Mhm.
there's so many things that you can do to reduce or fight against sexism in Vietnam, for example. If someone says something sexist, you can just say like drop things like, "Oh, that's you shouldn't say that." Like you can't say that, something like that. You
Mhm.
don't have to have like a philosophical debate about feminism, but just like these little reminders. I think that is more than enough.
Mhm.
And also just
Also be
try
an
to
example,
talk,
like
like be an
be good.
example.
And I think people would observe your behavior and they would model it. Like if they find that that behavior is like a good thing. Because I think, as hard, like just how people say they're not sexist and racist and like homophobic, is that as hard they want to be a better person, but sometimes they don't want to take the responsibility and I don't want to put out effort to do it. So by seeing an act that is simple but illustrate like a good example of advocating for what's right, they would eventually like model it and they would do the same. So it's very important to be an example yourself.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. Oh my god.
This has been very over the place. We talk about like
Yeah.
sexism and then the activism and then Vietnamese culture. I don't know how this is gonna come out, but
Yeah.
it's probably just
And
gonna be
and then it's kind of funny that we're gonna title this "We're Getting Married."
because we don't talk much about.
Yeah, we're not getting married because we don't even talk that much about marriage. But like you know
Yes,
what? Maybe
second
that's
view.
conversation for another day. Marriage is like a thing. Maybe we should do an episode on that because I
Mm-hmm.
do have like a good story though. I don't know if I'm gonna
Oh,
share it.
that's a tea. Okay, so thank you for listening. If you make it this far, first of all, how I just don't believe. I just cannot believe if you listen to this. Like, it's blown my mind that we have
Right.
like audience or like listener.
Right.
Um, and
Yeah.
make
Thank
sure
you.
to follow us on Instagram. Is at just dot another rant, another dot rant.
Mhm.
God, like, I'm bad at this. And if
Right.
you want to follow our personal accounts, we'll leave a link down below. And
Mhm.
also some suggestions and recommendations on um, YouTubers or podcasters or content creators or organizations to follow on social media.
Yeah.
And if you want to check it out, just um,
Yeah. Go to
open
the
the
show
description
notes.
box.
Mhm.
Hmm. And I think that's it. Do you have anything to add
No,
to?
that's it. I think that's it.
Okay,
Great.
so I guess we see you later,
Mhm.
probably in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.